Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, it's getting about that time for Sherrone Moore, this Michigan program, to make some noise in the transfer portal. Now, we've had this conversation over the last couple of weeks, but the picture is becoming a little bit more clear in terms of who's going to be available and where Michigan might go. I want to get into, kind of Michigan's strategy in the transfer portal and talk about one. And Dill, I think there are this is probably a good place to start. There are two main goals for Michigan going into this transfer portal window. And goal number one, bar none, is creating a Mercedes-Benz offense around the quarterback position. So whatever quarterback we have starting in 2025, whether it's freshman Bryce Underwood, whether it's a transfer portal quarterback, can have immediate success. We've talked about this a lot. Michigan kind of trying to change the perspective of this Michigan offense. Yeah, if you're going to have Bryce Underwood or with the transfer portal quarterbacks we're going to talk about have success, the offense from a skill set standpoint, I think needs to get revamped. And then I think, secondly, you're addressing the quarterback room, right? I think it's a little unclear in terms of what the quarterback room is going to look like over the next couple of weeks. There's a very real possibility that the quarterback room looks like true freshman Bryce Underwood and redshirt freshman Jaden Davis. In that case, in my opinion, you need to add a veteran quarterback in the transfer portal. I just don't think it's very feasible to head into 2025 with the youth you have in the quarterback room and no veteran presence. Now, the conversation is it's going to be how hard. It's more of a question than anything. How hard is it going to be to attract a quarterback in the transfer portal with five-star quarterback Bryce Underwood coming into this program? Well, I've been very vocal that I don't say this very often for freshman quarterbacks. I think Bryce Underwood is ready to go, or at least has the attributes and physical traits to play as a true freshman. Want to get into the quarterback conversation, then get into a conversation of, hey, what are some names around the quarterback, specifically in that wide receiver room, that is attractive to Michigan? Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Michigan fans, y'all have shown a ton of love, a ton of support to the boys. And as Michigan fans, it's been a beautiful last couple of weeks. Beating Ohio State, landing Bryce Underwood, the buzz Michigan's creating on the recruiting trail. It's going to be a fun next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, let it fly in the comment section. There's a lot of different angles that you could have and a lot of different opinions you could have about where Michigan should go. Dill, we don't necessarily agree in terms of where Michigan should go in that quarterback room. So I'll give you the tee box here. To me, you're already seeing Miller Moss is the transfer portal this morning. You're already seeing some buzz that Michigan is going to be a potential option for Miller Moss. How do you feel about Miller Moss coming to Ann Arbor in 2025?
So I think the main thing I would probably start with is at least I think Miller Moss has the right type of temperament that Michigan kind of needs. I don't think you're going to get a giant ego or a guy who's going to come in and be like a bit of a locker room killer. Because you look, I mean, even with the Caleb Williams thing, he never really made a stink. He never caused problems. He never sulked. He never pouted. None of that stuff that I think you look in this situation Michigan's going to be in with Bryce Underwood coming in. It certainly could create a little bit of tension with the older guys in the room. I think Miller Moss kind of has the mentality where you need it. My only concern is if you bring in a Miller Moss, like, can you sell that ultra high upside that I think Michigan's kind of trying to sell to everyone, that this offense is going to be a hell of a lot different? Because at the end of the day, Bryce Underwood's kind of the talent. And not saying Miller Moss isn't talented, but he certainly doesn't have the ceiling in the explosive capability that Bryce Underwood has. Can you still sell to those like real high level wide receivers and other skill positions that this offense is going to be?
So agreed. Does Miller Moss have the ceiling that Bryce Underwood has? Absolutely not. Bryce Underwood has about as high of a ceiling at the quarterback position as we've seen coming out of high school in a very long time. Is Miller Moss also a very good quarterback? Absolutely. I think even when Miller Moss was named quarterback one for USC heading into 2024, when the people were acting, I feel like you kind of have this conception of Miller Moss that he's Cade McNamara 2.0. This kid, in my mind, there's a reason he was a high 4-star prospect coming out of high school. I think he's a very talented quarterback. The reason there were some struggles for Miller Moss at USC, and I think all Michigan fans, we saw this firsthand. I mean, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore whipped the heck out of those offensive tackles for USC. That offensive line was a disaster for Miller Moss early in the 2024 season. I think that kind of resulted in some of those struggles. You start diving into Miller Moss's numbers, Dill, 2,500 yards, 64% completion percentage, 18 touchdowns to 9 interceptions in 9 games, 13 big-time throws, 43% completion percentage, 20-plus yards down the field. And here's the kicker. Was so good when he was kept clean in the pocket. Over 1,900 passing yards, 14 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. The problem with Miller Moss was that offensive line was a disaster for him early on in the season. I don't think he really had a shot to be all that successful to me. And you said, does bringing in a guy like Miller Moss adequately sell to these pass catchers in the transfer portal that Michigan is kind of turning a leaf on offense? I think it almost sends a better message. Because if we're going to talk about some big name wide receivers that Michigan, could go after. If you're one of those wide receivers, you're looking at that quarterback room and saying, there's no proven commodity in the quarterback room. I know Bryce Underwood's a 5-star. I know he's super talented, but he hasn't played any college football. Jaden Davis, you can say the same thing for. I'd almost, if I'm a Casey Concepcion, I'll kind of spoil it. That's who we're going to talk about a little bit. I'm almost more intrigued by having Miller Moss in the quarterback room because I know damn well that I'm going to get a dang solid quarterback play from Miller Moss. Am I going to get a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback? No, probably not. But I know I'm going to get solid play, potentially some Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback from Bryce Underwood. To me, adding Miller Moss, one, is the perfect stopgap that we're looking for in terms of 1 year of eligibility that can come in and win you a lot of football games if he does win the starting role. And number two, Dill, I think if Bryce Underwood beats out a guy like Miller Moss, we know he's going to be the real deal as a freshman because Miller Moss is a quarterback that I think can win a lot of games in the Big Ten for Michigan in 2025.
So that would always kind of be my fundamental thinking. Do you want a path almost for Bryce Underwood?
That's the question.
Dream, if you will, or do you want to raise the
and I think that the bigger question is, hey, if you want to recruit Miller Moss out of the transfer portal, you're sitting down and having the conversation of, hey, we can't give you that clear path to starting that some other schools will offer you in the transfer portal. We just can't with Bryce Underwood. To me, that's kind of how you want it to look. If Miller Moss is willing to come into that, that's the ideal picture for Michigan in the transfer portal. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, Miller Moss, Bryce Underwood, the battling it out. You know you're going to get good quarterback play from whoever wins that job. And maybe it could kind of look like Trevor Lawrence at Clemson that first year, right? Trevor Lawrence comes in as that special talent who's a true freshman, doesn't start the first 6-7 games, takes over the reins. Clemson wins a national championship. That might be the ideal situation for Michigan. I don't know. I normally would say whoever wins the job, and we kind of just went through the quarterback roulette. We don't know if we need that again at Michigan. Whoever wins the job in the offseason, probably you want to start the whole season. But I think it provides that. It provides at least a floor and a veteran presence in the quarterback room that Michigan might not have if they don't go to the transfer portal and grab a quarterback. And if Miller Moss is willing to come and compete, man, sign me up for Miller Moss. I think that'd be a home run. Now, the other name that a little bit less loosely connected, and Michigan's going to be a player in the quarterback position, so we'll talk about him, Kaidon Salter. My quick take on Kaidon Salter is I think there's a higher ceiling than Miller Moss in terms of what he can do as an athlete. There's probably a little bit of a lower floor, too, because you don't know what it looks like at the Power 4 level. Kaidon Salter in 2023 was freaking elite. I mean, a 13.6 average depth of target with a 61% completion percentage, threw for over 2,800 yards, ran for over 1,000 yards. That Liberty offense was extremely good in Conference USA. Now the question is, that's a big step up going to the Big Ten, but the talent for Kaidon Salter is undeniable and similar to Miller Moss.
The question about Kaidon Salter is not, I don't think, the step. It's about why was there such a dramatic difference from the 2023 year to the 2024 year. And you look, I mean, say what you want about Hugh Freeze and how he builds a culture of a football team. Fair questions, probably to an extent. Yes. That guy gets talent onto the field wherever he is. He had a lot of talent on that Liberty team into the 2023 year. I know Hugh Freeze was gone by then, but those were a lot of his guys he brought in. Like, that was a different level of talent for Conference USA. Yes. You have guys like CJ Daniels, who then in 2024 depart, go into the portal, and you don't have them in the production. I want to say plummets, but it certainly did not.
It dropped, and you have to figure out why it dropped. But I guess the final take I'll have on Kaidon Salter, I'm totally with you. Like, the concern in the production and really level of play. I went back and watched a little Liberty. Like, he just wasn't the same quarterback that he was in 2023. I don't know what the reason was, This kid still, he was a top 50 national prospect, was committed to Tennessee, didn't work out, goes to Liberty. I think there's still a lot of talent there with Caden Salter. It's just a little less proven at the Power 4 level. All right, we just not wasted, but spent 10 minutes. I started off saying, hey, the quarterback position probably comes to creating a really good offense. We spent 10 minutes talking about the quarterback position. Let's get into, again, what I think, and I think you agree. This is project one for Michigan in the transfer portal. Whoever's starting at quarterback, whether it be Bryce Underwood, whether it be Miller Moss, Michigan needs to make sure they're creating an offense around the quarterback that can be significantly more talented, have significantly more game changers. Now, good things are happening, it sounds like, with Donovan McCulley, and we talked about him, so we don't have to talk about him too much. 6'5", 200 plus pounds in 2023 was really, really good for Indiana. Dill, one of the intriguing things about Donovan McCulley to me is that he was a guy that was a quarterback prospect coming out of high school. And so I think he's still developing as a wide receiver. So even though you saw pretty good stuff from him in 2023, maybe there's another level he can reach as a full-time wide receiver in 2025. He obviously didn't play much in 2024 with the new coaching staff. That is what it is. Still, to me, if Michigan wants to send a clear message, and you said this, like, hey, Michigan wants to send a clear message that they're for real in terms of revamping this offense, Casey Concepcion, by far, in my mind, the best difference maker on the offensive side of the football that's currently in the transfer portal. This kid, as a true freshman at NC State, was their offense. He was their leading receiver, had over 100 targets as a true freshman, was also their leading rusher, is incredible after the catch, is super easy to get involved in an offense. This will be a quarterback's best friend. To have all you got to do, get him the football, and he'll do the rest. That kind of player. Now, the schools that are looking at him, Alabama, Auburn, Colorado, Kansas State, Penn State, those are kind of the five names that came to surface first. I'll tell you this much. This will be an NIL recruitment to an extent. And if Michigan can get themselves in the door with Casey Concepcion and then sell to him that, one, you come in and you're immediately like kind of the guy that we're building an offense around. And then also sell to him that, hey, the quarterback position with Bryce Underwood, and maybe you want to get Miller Moss in first so you can kind of sell, hey, we're going to have good quarterback play for you too. I think Michigan could have a chance if they want to kind of make that Bryce Underwood splash 2.0 in the transfer portal. If you're asking me who's the guy, to me, it's Casey Concepcion.
And frankly, you'll probably need a different offensive coordinator to sell him as well. Because I look at like how I think he wants to be used and when he's at his best. Yeah. It's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of getting him the balls in different ways. I mean, he can run good, clean vertical routes. He obviously can run basically
everything
back in his own right. So he's a guy who can do everything. I think they're going to need to like sell some vision of like, well, this offense won't be as stale as it felt like it was in a lot of 2024 season. Again, I think Bryce Underwood certainly kind of sell like, well, this is a guy who can do everything with you. He can run with, he can like kind of run the offense the way I think to maximize.
Regardless of the offensive coordinator, I do think Michigan can sell that. And I think what you would be saying to these kids is like, look, we didn't have the quarterback play to run some of that stuff. This is not me defending Kirk. I would like to see a change at the offensive coordinator spot, but even if you don't make that change, I do think you can sell with a guy like Miller Moss / Bryce Underwood. This will be a different offense. I do think you can sell. It might be harder without a new offensive coordinator, but I do think you can sell it. To me, this would be the guy. Like if you're for real about revolutionizing this Michigan offense and sending a message to everybody, whether they're in the transfer portal on the high school recruiting trail, you land Bryce Underwood. You land a guy like Casey in the transfer portal.
And obviously he's like the first guy, but I imagine there's going to be some really good players.
There's also
Concepcion's the type of guy who would like raise my hackles, like, oh, that's insane.
Yeah, 100%. He'll be I think, I don't know how many wide receivers better than him that will enter.
He'll be up there.
You do have some intriguing like youngsters who are not less like Jonte Cook, Michael Hudson, like those guys. I don't know if Michigan was in it for Jonte Cook out of high school, so we'll see if they kick the tires on him. He's a guy that I think the sky's the limit if he puts it together and is the guy. So we'll see. I'm going to throw out two other names real quick. Eric Rivers from FIU. Like as I'm digging into the transfer portal names, this kid caught my eye in a big way. He can do what I love about Eric Rivers is one, I kind of like these guys that have produced at the G5 level and are ready to step up. Like the sample size of transfer portal prospects that we've seen over the last couple of years it kind of does favor these kind of dudes that have played a lot of football, now are making the jump up. Eric Rivers, he he's a guy that when you turn on FIU, one, separator, yards after the catch, difference maker with the football in his hands. That's one thing you like. But then secondly, kind of the best of both worlds. He works vertically down the field exceptionally well. He's like always behind the defense. Over 18 yards per catch in 2024. That's kind of like what we're looking for. And then to my fellow Maction brethren, like I've watched this kid on Tuesday night, Wednesday night. Trayvon Rudolph from NIU just hit the transfer portal, and I don't think he's going to be a huge name. And I think if Michigan gets him, I don't know if he comes in and puts up over 1,000 yards receiving. This kid's an electric factory with the football in his hands, and at the very least will give you some juice in special teams, which is something that Michigan at times has lacked. This kid would be really exciting too. Again, not going to be the biggest name. I would keep an eye on him. I think he's kind of a fun cat. We'll update this list as one, more names hit the transfer portal. Two, we get more intel about where Michigan might be going. For the Michigan fans, again, we'll sign out saying this. Thank you for all the support. As Michigan fans, it's been a blast for the last couple of weeks, and y'all have been rocking with it. It's going to be busy. Buckle in. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we're going to talk to y'all later. Peace.